Becky, have you started? Great, that's just what I was going to ask. Welcome everyone to the cooking demonstration today. I don't know why that's still up on my screen. Hang on just one second. I want to make sure we don't have a problem with the recording. Perfect. So as I was saying, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Bobbie Ticknor. You probably know me around campus for a lot of different things. I run the virtual reality lab in the library. I also do the chili cook-off that we're excited it's going to be back this year. Some more information on that a little bit later. But what you may not know about me, besides obviously I have a love for cooking, technology, and criminal justice. I know all three weird things to pull together. But I was featured on a TV show on the Food Network where I got to go to Manhattan and film a show called Cooks versus Cons, which I thought was hilarious because I was playing a con, and as a criminal justice professor, that's just funny. While I was there, we participated in rounds where amateur cooks as myself went against professional chefs, and the judges kind of had to pick who they thought the amateurs were and who were the actual chefs. So that was season 2, episode 5. It's called Chicken Winging It. Feel free to go out and find it. It is on YouTube if you'd like. I won't spoil the results of that TV show, but it was a really great experience and a lot of fun. To do that particular show. I was invited back on another show. To be honest with you, I really wanted to kind of see what those cooking shows were like. How real were they? How real was the clock? And let me tell you, that 30 minutes is legit. So it was a really great experience, but I didn't feel the need to go back and do anymore because I kind of got my curiosity out with that. And my passion still does very much lie in the classroom. So I didn't want to tempt myself by becoming a next Food Network star. So VSU, you're stuck with me. So anyway, today we are going to do one of the recipes that I did on that show. The first round was, had to use a couple different ingredients, but I decided for one of my dishes during that round was I was going to do something that's near and dear to my heart from my Italian heritage, is a Panzanella salad. So Panzanella basically is just a way that the Italians use old bread. Italians love their bread, of course, just like the French do. But as you know, fresh bread, especially fresh bread in Europe, it doesn't have a lot of staying power. So it would usually go bad after a day, maybe 2 tops. But they didn't want to waste it. That was always about the Italian countryside. My parents are from Sicily. Well, my grandparents are from Sicily on my mother's side. And they grew up in a time where you really didn't waste anything. So you tried to find some sort of a dish, a tasty dish, to utilize everything you could. Now, if you know much about Italians too, tomatoes aren't as common in Italian food as they are here, but over time, this Panzanella salad did ultimately start to include tomatoes and some other things that I'm going to point out here as well. So we're going to do that Panzanella salad. And then, of course, I like a little protein with my salads. So I'm going to share with you one of my recipes for a mustard-glazed salmon. I've actually won 2 cooking contests. Oh, there's my kitty cat. I won 2 cooking contests with this recipe. So I am sharing a big recipe with you today. It's one of my favorite ways to prepare salmon. It's easy. And it turns out perfectly every time. It's very forgiving. If you don't, if you're a minute or 2 off, it's very forgiving of that because of the way that we cook and prepare this particular dish. Did you come in and help me today? Are you going to come help me? Yes, tell them. You got to love Zoom. All right, kitty cat. Okay, so first thing we're going to start out, just real quick, if at any point any of you have any questions, please do put those in the chat. Becky is my MC today, my moderator, and as there are questions that come up, don't be afraid to ask. She will chime in with me, and I'd be happy to answer those. That way you have them fresh on your head. Becky, I do believe you sent out the recipe I gave you already?
Yes, it was sent out.
Okay, great. So I'm going to do that recipe, but I might add a little things or change a little things up just to give you some ideas on the other things you can do with the salad. The best thing I like about a panzanella salad is very diverse. You don't have to just stick with these ingredients. You really can start to add things, make it seasonal, add different types of protein. So if you're not a salmon lover, don't worry about it. You can put a beautiful piece of grilled chicken on top of here. You can put nothing. You can put tofu. I've done it with a little steak with a little chimichurri sauce, kind of mix up a couple cuisines there. And I'll talk a little bit more about some other ingredients you may want to consider adding here at the end as well. But the first thing we're going to start with is a basic vinaigrette. Everyone should know how to do a basic vinaigrette. Have that in your wheelhouse. It's so much better than the store-bought dressings that you'll get. And I'm going to teach you kind of a basic way to do this. So in the recipe itself, I was going to choose a white wine vinaigrette. I wanted to kind of put some bottles out here. So one of the things you may also know about me is I do love to travel. If we're Facebook friends, you know, I like to put all my adventures online. And one of the things I really enjoy when I travel is I want to get the flair for the local culture, some of the foods, especially because that to me is such a representation of culture. And with that, everywhere I go, I try to pick up something as far as their olive oil or their vinegars. Now, every place is going to have a specialty of some sort. It may be that, it may be pecans here in Valdosta. It may be different types of oils like a pecan oil. We do have those here in Valdosta as well. So anywhere I travel, I really try to pick up at least a vinegar, oil, or a spice. So this is actually a spice from Indiana. This is an apple smoked salt. And it's got a pepper with it. Anything just to kind of get a flair of what that place was. And the advantage of that is every time that you have that, you use that in your recipe. For me, it just takes me back to that place and that experience that I did. So I have a few different things that I set out here. The vinegar is entirely up to you. As I said, I put a white wine vinegar listed on the recipe itself. You can use red wine vinegar. I have several different that are flavored here. This is even a Sicilian lemon balsamic. All kinds of different types you can use. It doesn't really matter, just whatever your flavor is. It's going to be in the same quantities that I have listed on the recipe. And the same kind of goes with the olive oil as well. Now, that said, I love a good olive oil. I'm an olive oil snob. I think that comes from my Italian heritage. There are some really good olive oils out there. There's also other types of oils if you don't want to do an olive oil. For example, this is a grapeseed oil. This is very tasty. This has got a lot of flavor. Not something I would cook with because of the burn level on it, but it is something that can kind of give you a different taste to your balsamic or to your vinaigrette. Other types of olive oil exist as well. This is one of my favorites. This is one of my prized one, actually. I got this in Tuscany when we were there a couple years ago. And this is an olive oil that is infused with orange, like an orange blossom. And it was just something that I still have, it's a couple years old, that I do keep because I actually just dip this directly in bread because it is such a good olive oil. So I encourage you when you're out visiting places, do things like this because you're going to have these memories and you can really put these into your dish and share this with your loved ones. Today, what I'm going to just use is kind of my basic olive oil that I use for everyday cooking. I'll grab it for you in case. Now, what the Italians will tell you is that real Italian, really good olive oil, you would not get in a bottle, a glass, a see-through glass like this. It's okay that it's glass, but it needs to be dark. Otherwise, that really starts to impact the quality of the olive oil over time. I've found this in the United States to be just a really very tasty, even kill, fairly inexpensive for the amount that you get. So if you're looking for an easy olive oil to have in your pantry, it's not as fancy as some of these and it's not as good as some of these, but this is a really easy, good one that you can use for your everyday cooking. So just wanted to show you that in case anyone wanted to see. But the vinaigrette's very simple. And again, doesn't matter what olive oil or vinegar you use, the recipe is basically the same. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to mince some garlic. I believe I have 2 cloves. And again, this all goes back to your taste. If you really love garlic, maybe you want to add in 3 or 4. I love garlic, so I tend to add in a lot. And then also in the garlic, what I did is I actually minced my, my shallot. Sorry, just had a little blue. I mixed my shallot and my garlic into the same bowl because I really like to get that shallot kind of infused with that garlic flavor before I even put it in the vinaigrette. So I'm going to put a couple tablespoons of this mix into my container. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to decide what to use. Wine vinegar is fine. You're welcome to use that. Today, I thought I'm in the mood for a red wine vinegar. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. No major brand here, just something I got at Publix, nothing special, but a nice even kill with this. You're going to 3 tablespoons of this vinegar. Now, most of you make sure you're taking out, your measuring spoons. I've been doing cooking so long that I really don't even measure anymore. I know about how long it takes to pour all of these and get these in there. So after you do that, then you want to kind of get into some of the flavoring aspects of it. One of the big things that you want to use is mustard. I always like to use a good mustard whenever I can. For this one, I would use a Dijon mustard because when you stir the vinaigrette, it is, you'd like it to get a little creamy, and that's what the mustard does for that. So I'm going to put a couple tablespoons of mustard. Again, that's just Dijon mustard. I even like the boar's head, but if you can go fancier, then you can certainly do that as well. After that, you're going to add some of your herbs. This is another thing I really like to do when I travel, especially in Europe. I like to bring home some of those herbs. Now, you can do the fresh herbs, that's fine. I have some here to put in the actual salad itself. When I'm making kind of a sauce like this and it's going to have time to set, I prefer to use dry myself. My 2 biggest ones that I use when I'm making kind of a sauce is going to be an herbes de Provence, that's a French herb, or just a basic Italian seasoning. Now, there is a difference between the 2 of those, but they have many similarities. Both an Italian seasoning and an herbes Provence is going to have oregano. It's going to have savory, rosemary, thyme. What else do they have in common? Sounds about right. Those 4, Veggie marjoram as well, usually. But the big difference between the French and the Italian version is the French is oftentimes going to have something like lavender in it that's very specific to what they grow in France. And then on the Italian side, an Italian seasoning is typically always going to have a sage in it. So rosemary, thyme, all those classic oregano, you're going to find that in both. But if you really like that flavor of sage, or if you want kind of a more flowery taste to your vinaigrette, go ahead and use the herbes Provence. So I'm just going to add a little bit of Italian seasoning here, keeping it real for my people. And then after that, you want to start adding your olive oil. So oil and vinegar don't mix. Yeah, it actually does, but it will ultimately separate. So you are going to want to do this and then get it onto your salad within a reasonable amount of time, within the time that we are actually going to have to prepare this entire meal. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to necessarily, you can make it ahead of time and put it in a mason jar, but you will have to shake it back up to get it back infused. So you're going to add about 2 to 3 ounces of your olive oil. And a little time saver, you could put this directly into your mason jar and that would be fine. And then you can just shake it up. So 2 to 3 good ounces of that. Now, some people like, this is going to kind of give you that vinegar, olive oil kind of taste to it, but with that tang of the mustard. Some people may also like a little bit of sweet. I'm not much of into kind of the sweet taste myself, but I know a lot of people really like that. So here's my little kind of hack for that. I don't want to use a lot of sugar. We know we want to try to limit the sugar that's in our diets. So I'll just use 1 little pack of stevia if I'm really wanting something a little sweet there. So that's that. And then the last little piece of this is we are going to squeeze some fresh lemon. I don't have that on the recipe because not everyone likes the lemon flavor with all the other things going on in the vinaigrette, but I find it to be lovely. So a couple little tricks with a lemon. If you're doing it by hand, you can do it like this so it falls directly into whatever you're mixing it with so the seeds don't fall in. You can do it that way. If you've got a little bit of a hard lemon or you don't want to squeeze it with your hand, I use my handy dandy kitchen tool here Still have it face up, but what you can do then is you could squeeze it, and then you can see that juice is falling in, and it's not really too hard on my hands if I don't want to squeeze it by hand. Still face up because we don't want those seeds in there, but that's a nice little hack to do that with. So roughly, half lemon, quarter lemon, depends on how much flavor you like with that. You'll get used to this as you do this a little bit more. And then basically all you're going to do is mix it up. You want to see it get a nice texture to it. You'll see that mustard mix in, so it's going to look a little darker. It should not be clear. So if it's clear, you either need a little bit more mustard or you need to mix it a little bit more. Now, when I was younger, I used to buy all these new kitchen gadgets, and I still do to some extent. Who am I kidding? But I will tell you, over my years of cooking and everything else, there is one tool that I cannot live without, and then that is, in my opinion, the best kitchen tool that you can ever have in your kitchen, and that's this, the spoon. You always want to taste everything that you cook. So just dip your spoon in, taste, and adjust as you need to. Now I can tell when I tasted that, one thing I forgot was my salt and pepper. I do like a little heavy on the pepper. I like a little spice in your life. And a pinch of salt. Don't go too crazy with the salt, but just enough to give it that flavor. Mix it up again. Now, because I'm using dried herbs, this will want to set for a few minutes. So those different herbs get nice and soft and not too difficult when you bite into them. Taste it again. That's really good. Now, I started with this. Any questions on the vinaigrette? Pretty straightforward. Let me show you what this looks like here. You can see it's not clear at all, and it just has that wonderful fresh taste. You can put this on salad. This is a marinade. You can really do anything with a vinaigrette. I love vinaigrettes. I chose to make this first one because this is a nice, good staple that people couldn't stay on for long, because this is an easy thing to impress your guests where you put it out. You're not putting out store-bought dressing. But I also do it for another reason. In the panzanella salad, we are going to use some red onions. They're going to be sliced very thin. You can see here, sliced very thin. The problem with red onions, if you just put them in a dish, maybe you've experienced this, they get real pungent. And they're a very strong flavor. I like the crunch, but I don't like the strong flavor of just the red onion. The advantage of making your vinaigrette first, this is a time saver. Instead of pickling these separately, which you can and keep them in the refrigerator, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and put those onions right in the vinaigrette, because it's going to sit here while we make the rest of this. And what's going to happen is it's going to get those flavors of the onion also in the vinaigrette, and it's really going to up your game. And then what it's also going to do is it's going to pickle those onions. I don't know how many of you out there like pickling. I've really gotten into pickling over the course of COVID, pickling just about everything. On my recent vacation, we went to Key West, and one of my favorite things that we had there that I never would have imagined pickling was pickled grapes, of all things. Pickling is super easy. You're just going to use vinegar, salt, some sugar, and a little bit of thyme as far as on the clock time, not the seasoning. And then add whatever seasonings you want to that, and you can pickle just about anything. So take a look at that recipe, or feel free to email me if you want some of that as well. So then we've got that kind of going. That's going to go for about the next 10 to 12 minutes or so. The great thing about this dish, once you know what you're doing, you can really get this done in like 15 minutes. So this is a great way. If you don't have a lot of time, you want a really healthy meal, you can kind of multitask. If you're good at doing that when you cook, you can really pump through this particular dish. So one of the other big things about panzanella that makes it such a popular dish is, of course, the use of bread. Now, You can choose whatever bread you want. I've used all kinds of different breads in a panzanella, including on the show. I actually used soft pretzel and it turned out fantastic. I kind of default to a ciabatta. I might do a French baguette. Those are kind of my two main ones, but really any kind of loafed bread, country bread, anything you might have baked yourself, any of that's going to be perfect for this dish. I've even done this dish with like a rye or pumpernickel bread. So if you have something left over from a different dish, feel free to use it in here. If you buy a big loaf of ciabatta and you're like, well, what am I going to do with all this? I have so much, I can't possibly use all this for a panzanella. Here's another little secret. Meatballs, use bread and milk. That's going to change your meatball game. So what you want to do then to make these breadcrumbs, I don't know if I'll make them all, but I might. You want to get a pan and get it hot, about medium heat. Now here's the trick with this. Bread burns quickly. So you do have to kind of pay attention to your bread when you're cooking this. That way you don't end up burning it. If you burn it, you got to throw it away and start over. Once it chars, it's done. You're not going to like the flavor. Now with the breadcrumbs, I do also, and I didn't put it on the recipe because that's really a very personal thing what your spices are, but I do like to add some spice directly onto my breadcrumbs before I cook them. So I'll do some salt, pepper, whatever else I like. I might add a little garlic, granulated garlic, whatever the case is. Whatever I'm going to do, I tend to add it on here. I use olive oil because that's what I default to cook with. If you really want to savory up that bread even more, you got to go with butter. I mean, butter's not healthy, but it is good. I'm going to stick with olive oil, trying to, watch the figure and all. And we're just going to go ahead and put these right into the pan. Once you get in there, if it doesn't look like it's dry or it looks like it's a little dry, you can always coat just a little bit more. Add a little bit more herbs, whatever works for you. If you don't want to use like an oil, so I have like a sesame oil, the olive oil, the grape oil. If you want to just use a spray, I really like this product. It is still an olive oil, but it's a spray, so you get the benefit of not using all the excess oil if you would not like to do that. So we're going to let that kind of go. And while we're doing that, we're going to make the glaze that's going to go on the actual salmon itself. So this is super simple. You're going to be surprised how really simple this is. So what we're going to start with is I like to start with my dry herbs, and I will use dry herbs only for this because the way it cooks and the crust it gets on it, dry herbs work a lot better. So I'm going to do a couple tablespoons of my Italian seasoning. I'm going to go back to my garlic and shallots. You can do just garlic, you can do shallots, whatever you like. I'm going to add a fair amount of garlic into this one though, because that garlic, when it makes this crust on the salmon, it's going to be in every bite and it's going to pop for you. You're really going to like that. And then we're going to go back to that Dijon mustard. Now you could sub out a honey mustard here if you wanted to. That's perfectly fine. If you like honey a lot, it's what this is. This is actually local sourced here. This is sold out of the UU Church here in town. I think they sell it for maybe $5 or $10. I don't have to quote the price, but this is a nice sized jar of honey and it's fantastic and it's locally grown here in Valdosta. Lots of great health benefits. If you want to use a Dijon and then pour your own honey in there, you're going to give your salmon a nice sweet taste, which is fantastic as well. So that's a personal taste as well. The big thing you want to make sure you get into this little mixture here is going to be this ground mustard. So let me show you this. Ground mustard is basically this kind of pickled mustard seed. Now you can get this at Publix. There's no special, you can get it on Amazon, but you can kind of see that mustard seed directly there into the ground mustard. They call it stone ground. You can find Dijon mustard and stone ground at Publix too, if you only want to get one. But I'm pretty generous with this too. Again, because I love the way the mustard seeds just kind of pop in my mouth as I'm eating the bites of tuna. All right, and then of course we want more lemon. Save that for water for later. And this one doesn't have any seeds, so I'm going to turn this down. Nice, good bit of lemon in there. You can kind of see a theme here, how these tastes really work well together. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my salt and pepper to taste. That's a very personal thing as well. And one thing I like to add on to this, again, I like a little bit of spice, is I add a crushed red pepper flake. How much you add is up to you. Again, I like the heat. Not too much. You don't want to blow yourself out, but a nice little heat in this really kind of pops that crust as well. Let's not forget, we still got our bread going on over here. You want to keep an eye on this, flipping it until it gets a nice golden brown. And then what we have left here, we just add olive oil. It's almost kind of like a vinaigrette. It's just going to be thicker because it's going to form this beautiful crust on top of this salmon. So then all we're going to do is just stir this all together. No vinegar in here, just these herbs, the mustard, and the olive oil. Mix that all together, and I'm going to come and show you what this looks like because it is fantastic. This does not just need to be on salmon. You can put this on chicken, any kind of fish. This is going to stand up well. It is just a lovely sauce. It is so, so easy to make. So let me show you what this looks like when you're finished. So you can see the ground mustard seeds. You can see the olive oil, those different spices in there. And it's just wonderful. It's so fresh and vibrant, especially with that lemon. Okay, so we're good to go. We've got our sauce for our salmon ready to go. When we move on to that step, I'm going to check my breadcrumbs. They are looking delish. And you really want to get that nice golden brown. You're going to have like a crouton crisp to it. Not too hard, but a nice crouton crisp. Any questions so far, Becky?
No, I haven't seen anything.
All right, we're rocking along then. Okay, so now we're going to start on our salmon. Spread's still going to go for a little while. If you don't have one of these, this is a fish spatula. I highly recommend it when you're working with fish. Using a regular spatula, trying to get underneath there, tends to break everything up. So that's not the best spatula to use with your fish. These are super cheap online. You can find those relatively easy. So what I have here is I have some wild caught sockeye salmon. You're probably like, how the heck did you get wild caught sockeye salmon here in Valdosta? Well, I didn't. Just like everything else, I do try to maximize ordering online for different things, including some of these meats that I cannot get here in Valdosta. So for this particular salmon, I use a company, they're called Butcher Box. You can find them online. Not only do they do wild caught seafood, so they have scallops, cod, all kinds of different, of course, salmon, but then they also do grass-fed, humanely raised pork, beef, and chicken as well. So they are a great company. I've been really impressed with them. I started them right about the time the pandemic started and have kept with them all along. So to me, the salmon has been wonderful. So simple thing, I typically try to spray the pan down real quick, just to kind of have that undercoat. This recipe is not going to give you that super wonderful crispy salmon skin. That's not what this recipe does, because we're using some of that wet ingredients with that forms that crust. If you do want a nice crispy skin, you want to consider doing this in a pan versus what I'm going to show you. It is possible, but not necessarily, I find. I think the flavors do well enough in here. So the first thing you're going to do then is go ahead and start your oven to broil. I know, who broils meat? Well, just trust me. So we're going to coat the fish with olive oil. That's just really going to kind of mix, get to the salt and pepper stays on top. A little bit of salt and pepper, always season. And I know we got a lot of stuff coming on, but trust me, you need the extra seasoning. A little bit of salt. And that's it to start. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this on broil for about 2 to 3 minutes. I like to go ahead and set my timer as I'm doing multitasking to about 2.5 minutes, and that usually gets me right where I need to be with my particular oven. Breadcrumbs are looking fantastic. A little bit longer on these, and do feel free to, add more liquid if you need to, as far as your oils, whatever you're using for that. So that's going to go for about 2.5 minutes, and after that, we're going to then put on this beautiful glaze that we made, and then that's going to form the crust, and we're going to be good to go. So let's go ahead, finish up these beautiful breadcrumbs. So I'll show you these. It's just a nice, lovely, golden, delicious, just like croutons. That's all it is. It's basically Italian style croutons. Finish those up. And then after the salmon, once we get the salmon glaze on, then all we're going to do is then put together our salad while that finishes cooking, and we're good to go. So get our glaze ready. Let me grab a hot pad. Now you do want to make sure when you do put your salmon in the oven that you are using a pan that is safe for broiling. Not every pan is. If you have a very cheap kind of, you stick stuff in the oven real quick, that's probably not going to work. You're going to hear it kind of bang and bang in the oven. So try to find something that's going to be broil safe, because you will ruin pans fairly easy that way. So we got about 40 seconds left on this. It's looking good. So what you're looking for, if you're doing just a regular salmon that you might get at Publix, you're looking for it to just start to have that slight pink color, that it looks like it's starting to cook, starting to get that top layers getting actually cooked. And then that's when you're going to pull it out, because then we're going to put this sauce on it, and it's going to cook the rest of the way through after that. As far as other places to get seafood, of course, Publix, Winn-Dixie, all of those are fine. A place I really like here locally in town is the Fish House, the Oyster Fish House. It's down on Oak Street. They have a wonderful selection of like whole fish. So if you want to ever do like a whole snapper, fantastic to do that preparation. If you want to do, they have shrimp, oysters. I've never had a bad piece of meat that I bought from there. They're located just down on Oak Street. I think they only take cash or check, but a great local source. Surprisingly, I did not expect to have a great fishmonger here in Valdosta, but they are quite impressive. All right, we got this, and now we're ready to pull out our salmon. So a sockeye salmon, you kind of know it's starting to cook, because it'll start, if you don't really put much on it, it'll start to get to a little bit of white speckles on it. So you can see here, it's definitely not cooked through by any stretch, but it is starting to cook on top. That's exactly where we want it. And then we're just going to add the glaze. You most certainly can brush it on, that's fine. I like a thick crust on mine, so I like to just use a spoon and really just plop that right on top, just like that. Get a nice cover, make sure you're covering everything on top. If you got leftover, cover the sides too, because you're gonna love this crust. Get everything on there. These are pretty big portions of salmon. So the portion I have, the recipe on the, that I sent out, will give you enough for 2 really big fillets, and then you can just multiply it as you need it. Don't waste any of that stuff.
Bobbie, I had someone send me a message saying that the chat was disabled for them. So we want to take a moment and let people open their mics if we have any questions at this point.
Sure, the chat's fine, but okay. All right, yeah, we can open mics. Does anyone have any questions that we're not able to do the chat? You're on mute. All right, well, we'll take questions at the end too, if for some reason it's working on my end. I'm not quite sure.
Hey, Bobbie, I have a quick question.
Oh, sure.
What are your thoughts on getting salmon that is farm raised versus wild caught? Because I'm always confused when I go to the store on which one to get or what kind of differences there are. What do you recommend?
If you can get wild caught anything, get wild caught. Basically, wild caught is like it sounds. It's actually caught out in the wild, and what they'll do is they'll kind of flash freeze it at the point of catch, and it's coming directly from the ocean. Farm raised, depending on the fish, they may be feeding those fish other fish. It may not be, a lot of the salmon in the supermarket doesn't look like wild caught actual salmon. It's got some dyes put in it to make it look more like wild caught. You can just see here the difference between like right here, this redness, that's a good sockeye salmon. That's really what a wild caught salmon looks like. So it's really it's a quality question. I'm going to go ahead and stick this back under our broiler so we can get that going. I mean, you'll probably see in the supermarkets, you'll see that farm raised is obviously cheaper. There's a reason for that. One, they are in these giant farms. If you ever go to one, and the fooding that they get fed, it's ground up other fish that have died, or they don't clean the tanks properly, so you may have dead fish they're eating in there. Just like if you might have an aquarium, if a fish dies, that kind of stuff happens on a farm raised commercial site. So I would always get wild caught if you can. And I can really taste a difference. I can especially taste a difference when I'm talking about shrimp. Salmon, of course, too, but shrimp, once you have wild caught and then you try to back to back, you'll never do farm raised again. So we're still on thank you. Thank you for the question, Heather.
We have one more question. I have Samsung has their hand raised.
Sure.
Hey, Bobbie, this is Sheila. This isn't about the food protect, but I am so admiring your salt and pepper container there.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell me where you got? I love that.
Isn't it so cute? So my three things I use the most, and I'll switch out the top one sometimes. Right now I've got red crushed pepper in here because I'm digging the heat recently. But yeah, this thing is great. You can find this on Amazon. It's like $7 or $8. It's not that expensive. It's bamboo, and basically you just put your herbs in here you use the most. And then when I'm cooking, I can just reach in there and grab it as I need it. So yeah, thanks for noticing that. I love these these make my life easier. Then I don't have to get out a grinder. I don't have to get out all the different seasoning. And then every so often if I get tired of the crushed red pepper, I'll put in Italian seasonings at the top because I do tend to like that quite a bit. But yeah, that's, and they have them where they're like really big too. So you can find those on Amazon pretty easily. You do want to start looking at this. Don't be alarmed. It is going to smoke a little bit because you are broiling. Don't be alarmed with that. That's just the mustard and how it's reacting with the heat. But you do want to keep an eye on it, and you want to get it to the point that you like the crust. Are there any other questions? We're good? All right, just raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll stop, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. So you want to just keep an eye on this. No more than, I'd say about 5 to 6 minutes is about the perfect amount of time that this is going to stay in there to get that nice, beautiful crust on top. And we're getting close to this already. It is looking, guys, if you could smell it in here right now. I love the smell of fresh salmon. Oh yeah, that looks beautiful. How quick was that? Like, how quick was that to make? So now we're just really going to, put everything together. I'm going to let the salmon sit here and kind of get in its juices a bit. Don't forget to turn off that oven. Sometimes I forget to do that. So first things first, we're going to use our tomatoes. Now, I like pretty dishes. For me, you kind of start eating with your eyes. And so I like to make a dish as pretty as possible. So I will do cherry tomatoes with this. And I like to get the 3 colors. So you've got just like a traditional color, the little darker tomatoes, a little bit different in flavor. And of course your yellow tomatoes. It just makes it really pretty. And it just adds on that extra little thing when you're looking at it, just to say, wow, this is a beautiful dish. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to add those tomatoes. Nice and easy. Now, another big thing, I don't think I put it on the recipe, but a lot of Italians will use this, is I use an English cucumber. English cucumbers, basically, they don't have as many seeds as a lot of the cucumbers that we use here. They're really long. They come in this plastic thing. I would just use a vegetable peeler and just take off the skins, and then you don't have to remove the seeds or anything. You can put everything in there because there's really not a lot of seeds going on in that. So we've got our tomatoes, we've got our cucumber. We're going to drop in those breadcrumbs. I don't know if you heard that or not. Nice little crisp there. Right. All right, so then we're going to use some of our fresh herbs. You can cut these, you can tear them, whatever makes sense to you wherever you're at. I don't mind tearing herbs when I'm doing something like this. I think it really opens them up and kind of gets that smell and that flavor. What I'm using today with this is I'm using fresh basil leaves and fresh parsley. I like the way both of those work in this salad. So just go ahead, tear them up, just get in there. Use your hands. You can use a knife if you want. I mean, that's fine. Nice little cuts. I like the rustic feel of a panzanella, and then tearing these herbs kind of gives me that as well. All right, so we got our cucumber, bread, basil, tomatoes. We're going to go back now to our vinaigrette. Remember, we put those onions in there, so we are still going to have those. Now, here it depends on how much vinaigrette I want to use. How healthy are we being, right? So I'm going to go ahead, pull my onions out loosely, just from the, I'm going to go ahead and put those in there. And you can see kind of how much softer they are. Let me show you over here. A little bit softer. Those are starting to pickle, which is perfect. That's exactly what you want with this particular dish. So go ahead, get those onions out. And with that's probably going to give me about as much vinaigrette as I'm going to want to use with the amount of panzanella that I used. And I've got some to save for later. And another thing that I really like to put, let me just go ahead and I'll mix this and kind of show you the all natural panzanella. And you can salt and pepper the flavor as well. I'd go ahead and do that. My handy dandy little salt and pepper thing. Not too much salt. And here's the point, you can add some lemon if you choose to, but you got that vinaigrette in here. This is what a traditional panzanella is going to look at. Look how pretty that is. Look at those colors. Doesn't that just look wonderful? Like if that was sitting in front of you, just to be able to see really nature at its best, but then that crunchy bread on top of it too. It's got that savory kind of buttery taste to it. You guys, it's so easy to make and just wonderful. Now, one thing I like to do as well, I do like all this, but I try to stay away from the breadcrumbs a little bit. I'll go ahead and add some arugula to it to kind of make it feel a little bit more like a salad than what I already have going here. So I'll add the arugula to it. So it makes it a little heartier, gives it another great color. Arugula is one of my favorite, as far as salads go, my favorite type of leaf to use. It's very versatile. You can put it under things if you're serving. It just adds a wonderful lemony, slight bitter, but real lemony kind of flavor to it that works so wonderful with this salad. So let me show you then what this looks like. So you can see how even more beautiful that arugula made this salad. And it feels like a salad now. All right, so we now have our salad prepared. I usually try to clean up along the way. My husband usually does clean up if I'm honest. But I try to clean up along the way when I'm doing these. So now all we really do is plate. How quick is this? I've been talking a lot. I've gone into lecture teacher mode where I'm talking too much, but we still managed to get this done almost in the amount of time. So all you're going to do is just put a nice little helping of that beautiful salad Grab a little too much arugula, getting excited. Make sure you get nice tomatoes. And then we're going to take one of these gorgeous salmons. As soon as I find my, I just went on about my spatula for the fish, and now I don't know where I placed it. All right, I'm seasoned, but I would still recommend, if you can, use the spatula for the fish. But I've been doing this a while, so I can plop this myself directly on top there. Here's the point. You can drizzle a little more vinaigrette on top if you want, but I'm telling you, it's going to be perfect as it is. And then I like to garnish just a little lemon right on the side. And let's take a look at this. So do you see this beautiful crust on the salmon? You can see now it's all the way cooked through because we broiled it. We've got all that salad together, and it's going to be a fantastic lunch. All right, so let's go ahead, and I just want to cut in real quick into the salmon so you can actually see. The sockeye salmon, it's still juicy. It's cooked all the way through, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of fish. How easy is that? So one quick thing before I answer any more questions, I do want to point out that Panzanella is so versatile that you can use all kinds of different things with it. So other things I put in a Panzanella, if I want to make it Mediterranean, I'll put in some olives. If I want to make it, this is what I did on the show, is I actually made it with stone fruit, peaches, which I don't know, we might have a few of down here. Peaches that are in season right now. You can put those in the Panzanella, makes it wonderful. I might put some capers in there or on this dish on top. Avocado, so healthy, perfect in the Panzanella. It's going to give it that creaminess. Or I might even throw this and whip this into my vinaigrette as well. Fall, you got your butternut squash, perfect in there too. Anything you can really think of, it is fantastic with this dish. Super easy. Don't like salmon, change out the meat. You're perfectly fine to do that as well. I will answer questions here in just a minute. I do want to say the last little thing. The announcement on the next cook-off, we are doing the 3rd annual chili cook-off this year. Yay, we're back. The date for that is going to be October 27th. That is a Wednesday. It's the week before homecoming, and it's going to be 6 to 8 in the Magnolia Room. I'll be sending out a save the date and also a way for you to sign up if you want to compete or if you just want to come and taste. I will not be competing because I run it, but it's such a great event. If you haven't ever come, I urge you to come because it's just a really fun night. Door prizes, we have a silent auction. Proceeds all go to, at least for the registration fees, go to Campus Wellness. And then this year we're all, also doing a side contest at the cookout, and that's going to go to the Perelman Cancer Center for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So 2 wonderful ways to give back to VSU and enjoy some good food at the same time. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And if not, bon appetit.